Well, hello again. Welcome to Impact AI, where we unpack the reality behind the buzzwords in AI and data. Today's guest is someone who's been on the front lines of data transformation for over 2 decades, Michael Canzoneri. Canz is co-founder of DataSQRL, former VP at DataIQ, and a veteran of leading large-scale AI cloud and event streaming transformations at Confluent, DataStax, Gartner, and more. He's also a startup founder, open source contributor, and has academic chops ranging from Villanova MBA to data science at Harvard and quantum computing at MIT. Michael, I'm thrilled to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me, John. I'm really happy to be here.
Cool. Before we dive into the mess of data mesh, could you tell our listeners a bit about your journey and what's driven you to shape the future of AI and data at so many different levels?
Yeah, I kind of fell into technology. I started at Penn State as an astrophysics major, but I couldn't finish as as a physics major for financial reasons. So I switched over to data, and I was going to go work at Roadway Trucking, which became Yellow a little bit later on. And a few weeks before I graduated, I got an email from a recruiter about a half a mile away from my house, where I currently live, right outside Philadelphia. And they gave me a job as a Java developer. And from there, I ended up leaving that company and joining a two-person consulting firm. I was employee number three,
Hmm.
and they were an Oracle boutique, everything Oracle. I did some Java development there and then transformed into a BI and data warehousing person. I was doing ERP implementations night and day. And I ended up saying after a few years of that, being really, really hands-on, I'm like, I want to be a management consultant. It just so happened there was a friend who worked at Gartner who was an old customer, got me a job there, and I basically parachuted in and fixed a bunch of digital transformations that went really off the rails. And from there, I kind of went on my own for a little bit. I had some forays into some side companies, and for a bit, I was just like, I really want to get the Silicon Valley experience, and I got
Yeah. Yeah.
it. I went to DataStax, then Confluent, then DataIQ, and then I was taking some time off, and I said, I kind of want to do something for myself. And a friend who worked with me at DataStax, Matthias Broschler, my co-founder at DataSquirrel, connected with me. He's like, "Hey, I'm doing DataSquirrel." And he described it to me. I'm like, "Hey, I'm writing a book about this.
Right.
Let's do it." And so for the last year and a half or so, that's what I've been doing.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you've worked at both startups and global enterprise leaders. How has that shaped your perspective on what works in data strategy?
Yeah, it's kind of it's interesting. I've become more of a team psychologist in my
Interesting.
role in the last 10 years now, than a really hardcore technical person. And the things I've noticed and what has transformed me in many ways is the non-technical pieces.
Hmm.
For instance, I'm working with a company right now who is really looking at the impact on AI in their industry, and they're really struggling on how to move forward.
Hmm.
So, what I think has transformed me over the years is not so much looking at the technical implications, but looking at the people and the business implications.
Right.
So even though I look at things through a data perspective many times, I'm often asking myself, well, what's really happening to the organization?
Yeah.
And I think
Hmm.
that's what's really been transformative about my journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it comes from a lot of battle scars, a lot of being kicked in the teeth and humbled.
Well,
So, yeah.
you've been fashioned by the fire,
Yes, yes, I have.
huh? That's wonderful. So, looking back, can you think of a project or a moment that really crystallized your thinking about how organizations should or should not manage their data?
Yeah, I think I think I look back to a really interesting project I spent the better part of 2 years on at an oil and gas company.
Okay.
And they were they were on an outdated ERP and they were going to a new ERP. And I won't divulge the details, but it was like a 40 or $50 million project.
Mm,
And it was run so smoothly. And I think it had nothing to do with the data or the application or the consulting team they had in place. It had everything to do with the leaders that they put in place on their side.
wow.
And you kind of realize that these leaders that they put in place were put there because they knew where all the bodies were buried in terms of the data.
Yeah.
And they understood the business processes so well that they could tell you, you that data is going to work here, that data is not going to work there. We have to cleanse this data, we have to improve the quality there. Oh, to do that, we need to change the business processes. So they really knew everything at such a detailed level. It gave me a real appreciation for data, not as an output or an input, but as a living organism of the
Okay.
organization.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, getting into uh, data mesh is a mess. I've got this organized in kind of their own little subtopics. So
Yeah.
we'll start out. Number one, concept versus reality. When you look at how data mesh is being pitched versus how it's being implemented, what's the biggest gap that you see there, especially in like AI oriented organizations?
Yeah. I think the biggest gap is the technology versus the reality. I should say the technology or organizational maturity versus the reality.
Hmm.
And I'll take it a kind of a step up, if you will, or a few steps up. So I came out of my undergrad was at Penn State, my first love, I think. And I came out of school when the dot-com bubble was the thing,
Right, right.
right? And what I think is really happening with data mesh or data fabric or now AI is really, I want to call it an exhaustion from transformation.
Hmm.
So I came out of school, we had the dot-com bubble. Everything right before that was being connected to the internet. And now companies at that time were hearing, oh, now you have to have a presence on the internet. You have to have an e-commerce presence. Okay. And then a few years later, I got caught up in it when I was at Gartner. You had the digital transformation trend. And then a few years later, you had the cloud transformation trend.
Right.
Everyone's going to the cloud. And in between, and now you have this AI transformation trend starting.
Yeah.
And somewhere in between there, you had this data mesh concept pop up.
Okay.
And I think what you're seeing from a lot of people is just an exhaustion from the constant transformation because they're kind of being promised, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread,
Right.
which I always wonder about that quote anyway. Like, what happened with unsliced bread? But I'll think I'll dive into that territory another time. So you had this cloud transformation where everyone was being pushed to the cloud,
Hmm.
and now they're pushed to the cloud, and they feel like it's more of the same.
Hmm.
And if you remember, like during the late aughts, there was this push for service-oriented architecture. And I know because my boss was like, hey, go learn service-oriented architecture and implement it. And I
Wow.
did.
Yeah.
It's almost like the Mark Twain quote, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme.
Yeah, yeah.
It kind of feels like that.
Right.
So what you're seeing is people saying, oh, this data mesh technology can do all these things. And the reality is maybe it can, but your organization can't.
Right. Yes. I get that.
So I think that's, to me, if I had to sum up what people are seeing with data mesh, it's just that. It's like I've been going through all these transformations. I haven't had a chance to like take a breath and catch up and think about, well, is data mesh really right for me? And what is it really? And do I
Yeah.
really understand it?
Yeah.
So I think that's what's happening.
Right. Absolutely. Um, it's funny because as I've done these, well, I just did one yesterday, a podcast, and different topic, but y'all are almost saying the same thing. It's AI can handle it. It can handle the data. The data is there. The technology can handle it. It's the humans that have to
Yeah.
adjust.
Well, I'll point out one thing. I don't think the AI can handle the data.
Okay.
Okay. And the way I think of it is like a Venn diagram with three overlapping circles: the AI, the data, and the context.
Hmm.
And if you put AI and data together, it's kind of like like calling two pieces of bread a sandwich. You need the business context. That's what makes your business special. When I was doing ERP implementations and digital transformations, customers would always say to me, well, the new process, this software will handle everything. I'm like, no, it won't. It will handle 80 to 90% of what you need it to. It's that 10 to 20% that makes your business special and gives you a competitive advantage theoretically.
Right, right.
And if you unleash AI in the data, it won't have that competitive advantage. It won't have that context.
Hmm.
So you need to understand how to inject that context into the AI and data for it to truly work.
Yeah, yeah. Like so, yeah. That this the next question I had, which is kind of relates. So data quality at scale.
Hmm.
Does decentralizing data ownership make it harder to ensure the quality and consistency that AI models depend on?
I think data quality is an illusion in many respects.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I know there's going to be companies or people out there to say, no, we have great data quality. That's fantastic. You are of the 1% of companies I know that can say that.
Interesting.
Having been in the trenches doing the implementations with, I should say, being side by side with the teams doing the implementations,
Yeah, yeah.
I have not heard one company say our data quality is fantastic. And I have been across industries like you cannot believe, in both public and private sector, at the depths of companies, at the forefront of where their company interacts with customers. And I could tell you hundreds of implementations. I can't think of one company that can say our data quality is fantastic.
Okay.
So I take exception to the question.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
But from a decentralized perspective, I think, it's funny. You get what you get and you don't get upset.
yeah.
And I think that's true for the decentralized nature of data quality. I think you just have to accept what you have and and this is that context thing again, right?
Yeah.
Put the proper context to the data and knowing the assumptions, knowing the data quality may not be optimal. Understand that that's just going to be a constant.
Yeah.
And AI could probably improve it to some extent, but it won't know how to improve it unless you tell, oh, this is the level of quality I need from the data for my AI to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I did a podcast a week ago, and he was doing uh, Alzheimer's research, and he was saying, 85%, 90%, that's not good enough for what we do. When you're trying to diagnose a patient um, or provide care for a patient, 90% isn't good enough. It's got to be better.
Yeah, and I'm happy that people like him or her, whoever you're talking to, exist
Right.
because from an academic perspective, you want to see that rigor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're when you when you try to implement that rigor in an organization, I think that's when it really breaks down.
Yeah.
Because that's just the nature of academic versus enterprise or a public
Right.
sector or a private sector.
Yeah.
But I do get that, and in a lot of respects, 85 to 90% is not good enough.
Right.
But I think it's also relative to the organization and what you're trying to achieve.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that could be fantastic. Right.
Yeah,
It's all relative.
yeah.
Let's talk about organizational readiness. What culture or structural capabilities need to be in place before a company considers data mesh?
Data mesh often isn't as much about the technologies as it is about the business processes.
Hmm.
And I'll say the same thing about AI. Matter of fact, I just put together an AI first maturity model. And a lot of AI relies on that data, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the big things you have to look at when you look at being ready for a data mesh is saying, have kind of like an inventory of where the data lives and what data you have
Yeah.
and what business process does it map to. And I bet you, without a doubt, you're going to see massive data duplication.
Hmm.
You're going to see massive overlap in applications. And what the path that has led me to really dive really deep into is data products.
Okay.
And I think to effectively, you can implement data mesh fairly quickly, I think. But once you do, what I think you also have to start looking at is how do we produce our data to make it effective?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to start treating data as a product and the manufacturing process.
Yeah.
So if you're a consumer of data, whether you're an application or an analyst, you don't want to care about where you get the data. You just want to get the right data and you
Right.
want to get it easily.
Yeah.
So you really want to remove that complexity. So if I were setting out on the journey of implementing data mesh, I may completely skip over that.
Hmm.
And I may look at it from a business process perspective and say, am I AI ready? And data mesh might be one of the steps you take to get to being AI first or AI ready.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I would go if I were a CIO somewhere or a CDO somewhere or even a CEO. Those are the questions I would be asking. And
Okay.
those are the questions I'm starting to get asked by just line of business owners,
Yeah.
somebody who's in charge of customer experience.
Right.
They're saying, how is AI going to eat me?
Yeah.
And how do I combat that? And as you kind of go down that trail, you're going to say, is my data ready? I think that's the fundamental question you're gonna get to.
Hmm.
And what data does my business processes need?
Right.
And how do I bring that together? So you're gonna get to where shameless plug we got to with Data Squirrel and say, let's make this easy for automating enterprise data.
Okay.
And data mesh is a function of that, is a way to do that. But I think that's the more important question. You have to start asking yourself, is my company an AI first company? Where is it on that maturity curve?
Okay.
And as you go through that, you're going to say, oh, I might need something like a data mesh to enable AI readiness.
I got you.
So it's a long way of saying, if you're saying, should I implement the data mesh? You're asking the wrong question.
Right.
You should be saying, is data mesh going to accelerate or help me become an AI first company?
Right. That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. What about the impact on AI workflows? From your experience, does data mesh accelerate or slow down AI model training and deployment?
There's a deeper question there around business process.
Okay.
But I think, again, it goes back to, and if they're coupled together. And here's what I mean. If you look at all the big vendors, they all talk about a lot of the same use cases. They take a very use case specific or a specific perspective on things. And you'll see things like Customer 360 and inventory management. And that is like three or four levels too high.
Hmm.
Data mesh, when coupled with an understanding of your business processes, will help you achieve agentic AI solutions. Because the questions I'm getting are not at the, oh, I want to implement inventory management, or I want to implement patient 360 in healthcare. The questions I'm getting is, hey, I'm looking at lab results from a patient and I have to get them from point A to point B. Help me understand how my data needs to be organized to get there. Can I use my existing data infrastructure to do that? And how does agentic AI impact that?
Right.
And the questions go down to, if you look from that pickup to delivery business process, there are about 11 different spots where agentic AI can be leveraged.
Hmm.
So your inventory management, your supply chain management,
Yeah.
you're starting to have to go as a vendor or as a data professional. You have to start going to a very minute level of detail to understand. Can I get the model, the data it needs to be trained to answer the business specific questions of, for instance, is this order right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
So I think there's a shift that's taking place there for me when I deal with customers because they have all the big vendors saying, "Oh, implement us for inventory management." And they're like, "I don't need that. I need to answer this very specific question."
Yeah.
So if your data mesh can provide you that specific level of data, yeah, it can help you train your model.
Yeah.
But if it's not getting to that level of, if you're not getting to that level of detail, it won't be able to hinder you.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. So, the future outlook. Um, do you see data mesh maturing into something truly scalable for AI, or will it remain more, I don't know, hype than reality, I guess?
It's going to remain more hype than reality. And I think the reality is very specific to each company. I walk, I couldn't tell you like 10 years ago when I was 10, 12 years ago when I worked at Gartner, I walked into multiple Fortune 500 companies that still close their books to report to Wall Street using Microsoft Excel.
Wow.
And I can't tell you how many companies. It's staggering that that happened at. And then they would implement something like Hyperion, which for the younger folks who are listening to this was this great CFOs loved this tool because it helped automate those year-end, quarter-end, month-end closes. I bet you if I walked into a lot of companies today, a lot of them are still closing on spreadsheets, even though they
Interesting.
have all these tools available to them,
Right. Right.
because it comes down to simplicity and ease.
Sure.
And if the data mesh vendors don't make it easy for people to use their technology,
Hmm.
it's going to remain more hype than
Yeah.
reality.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see here. There's one left. Um, if you don't like the question, then I'll give you the liberty to dive into
Yeah,
something that you want to discuss.
sure.
It just says alternative approaches. From what for most companies, what architectural or governance models offer the benefits of data mesh without pitfalls?
I don't think there are any.
Nah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think what I was talking to a large financial institution a couple weeks back, and we are talking about this very thing. And it turns out that for one set of data around portfolio performance, they had two separate teams that owned the data.
Hmm.
And it's because one team was dealing with it from a sales perspective, another team was dealing with it from a analytics perspective, like straight out like performance perspective,
Right, right.
right? And in those situations, it's now decentralized, but who's right?
Yeah,
And what I was saying was you don't necessarily need a centralized data governance model. You need a data product manager to produce the data in a consistent and efficient way.
yeah,
So when these two teams are requesting the data from you, they can rely on the quality and the consistency and the data integrity.
yeah.
And that has a number of aspects or attributes to it. So I think you have to start thinking in terms of data product managers to get to a better governance model. And that can be distributed, that can be decentralized, it can be centralized, but I think it has to rely, I think it's going to be decentralized because it has to be in the line of business.
Yeah,
Because only those people in the line of business really know if the data is valuable and is of high quality.
yeah.
So I hope that gets to
Oh,
your
it
question.
does. I mean, your insight's invaluable because um, you've been there. I mean, and you've seen it from all perspectives, from entry level to CEO, founder, and then all in between as a, you know, contract researcher, whatever. I mean, you've done it all. And so it's interesting to hear your take on these questions. So so tell us what the status of Data Squirrel is
Yeah.
lately, and what's trending and what's exciting with the company.
Yeah. So we set out to essentially make getting the data you need easy. You talk to, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to over the last, 4 or 5 years about this. Even in like the last 2 years, I've spoken to hundreds of people about this. And it's not that they don't have the data. They have oceans of data. They're drowning in the data.
Right.
They don't have the information they need from the data.
Okay.
And, there's multiple reasons why, but one of the biggest reasons, and I think a lot of people could relate to this, is it's hard to get to the data
Hmm.
because it's in this SaaS application or it's in this cloud bucket over here and it's this database over there.
Yeah.
So if you want to get a real true understanding of, let's say, what a customer is, which you'd be really surprised at how many different definitions there are to a customer in an organization.
Sure.
You have to know actually, it's probably closer to 7 to 10 different technologies to actually get the data, merge it to get a true picture of what's going on with the customer.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just thought that was way too hard. Like, I have multiple degrees. I've done a lot of graduate work, as you noted at the very beginning, in advanced areas of technology. My co-founder has a PhD in database systems. Most
Yeah.
people don't have advanced degrees in, like
Right.
that.
Right.
We just believe you shouldn't have an advanced degree to
Okay.
get information from your data.
Right.
So that's why we built DataSquirrel, was essentially to say you should be able to come in and say, this is the data I need, and here's how I want to present it, or here are the metrics I need to derive from it.
Sure.
And you shouldn't have to worry about the underlying complexity of the technologies.
Agreed. Yeah.
So, and starting an open source project in this day and age is really different. Because I started as a Java developer.
Yeah.
And if you're around at that time in the early 2000s, you could start contributing to a project fairly easily.
Hmm.
And you would be on the message boards a lot. So for instance, years and years ago, I was the forum moderator for Log4j, which is an Apache Foundation project. And people would come on and ask questions, answer questions, pose ideas. And now the open source communities have really shifted to basically being a resource for problem solving.
Hmm.
I have this problem, help me solve it. And the glean is off the idea, the moniker of being an open source contributor by many people.
Hmm.
But a lot of the enterprise technology you use today is based on the fact that people were open source contributors and they wanted to contribute and put their stamp on it.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's just an interesting time to have a startup like that in the age of AI when AI really needs the data to be
Yeah. True.
effective.
True.
But we're seeing some great traction with people. We're just getting our name out there. Uh, uh, Talking to a customer, and they were talking to another vendor of theirs, and they're like, "Yeah, we've heard of Data Swirl," which is very surprising, but also very encouraging
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's just a few of us, starting out, and we're still, chugging along
Yeah.
after a couple of years here. So it's great to see that our hard work is paying off.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure it
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up all the questions that we have. It's been a lot of fun, Canz. So I think a lot of leaders listening will take away a healthier skepticism about chasing trends and a clear sense of what it actually takes to manage data for AI at
Yeah.
scale. Well, thank you for joining us. And
Yeah.
to our audience, if people want to learn more about Data Squirrel, where's the best place to find you?
You can find us at Data Squirrel, data, DATA, squirrel,
Yeah.
SQRL.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and I am constantly answering in-mails and just random connection requests. I tell people all the time, reach out. I'm always happy to spend time with you, and answer any questions you have or help you however I can. Because I'm a firm believer that in paying it forward and helping people out.
Well, that's
So
wonderful.
yeah,
Wonderful.
so more than welcome, or more than happy to and welcoming to answer any questions and give any advice I can.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, folks, thanks for joining us. And to our audience, stay tuned for our next episode of Impact AI, where we'll cut through more hype on AI and get to the heart of what works. Thank you for joining us.